Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on an epic journey of cause and effect. We're tracking the monumental shift from struggling nomadic hunter-gatherers, literally fighting a daily battle just to survive, to the brilliant architects of ancient civilization. It's the story of how humans finally learned to farm, and trust me, it completely changed the trajectory of our species forever.
Here's our quick roadmap. We're going from the Ice Age to India, hitting the Mehrgar Revolution, tracking the expansion of farming, diving into storage and trade, and wrapping up with art and nature worship. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. From the Ice Age to India. Imagine a world where early humans were just constantly on the move, nomadic travelers fighting a daily battle against a totally frozen, unforgiving landscape just to stay alive.
The story actually kicks off roughly 200,000 years ago, in the harsh plains of Africa. But the real turning point, that happens about 70,000 years ago. Pushed by wild climate swings, a small, daring group crossed the Red Sea and ventured into Asia. And modern DNA research proves these early travelers made their way across the globe, eventually taking their first steps on the fertile soils of India around 65,000 years ago, settling near rivers like the Narmada. Now, they were master hunters, absolutely, but they were still at the total mercy of nature. That is, until 12,000 years ago, when everything flipped.
So why did these master hunters, who'd literally been wandering for tens of thousands of years, suddenly just stop? Well, the answer is Holocene warming. Around 12,000 years ago, the ice sheets melted. Rivers fueled by Himalayan snow began to flow steadily, bringing all this rich, fertile soil down to the plains. But more importantly, this massive climate shift gave humanity nature's absolute greatest gift: predictability. For the very first time, humans noticed the seasons were stable. If a seed fell in the mud, it reliably grew back. This realization sparked a monumental psychological and physical shift. We moved from a chaotic nomadic existence, relying on totally unpredictable food sources and seeking shelter in random caves, to a settled life. By just observing these predictable rhythms, humans realized, hey, we don't have to chase our food anymore. We can actually grow it. Shifting from temporary shelters to permanent mud houses wasn't just a diet change, it was a completely new way to exist on this planet.
Section 2. The Mehrgar Revolution and the very first farmer village. So, where did this actually begin in the Indian subcontinent? To find out, we've got to travel back to a very specific, dusty afternoon in Baluchistan, back in 1974, where an archaeological team made a discovery that literally rewrote history.
That dusty afternoon brings us to the incredible site of Mehrgar. A French team led by Jean-François and Catherine Jarige dug up the subcontinent's very first known farming village, dating back roughly 9,000 years. And the craziest part? These people weren't just randomly scattering seeds and hoping for the best. Nope, the evidence shows they were practicing selective breeding of wheat and barley, taking seeds originally linked to the Fertile Crescent in the west and adapting them to a totally new soil and climate. On top of that, they formed cooperative relationships with animals. They domesticated sheep, goats, and cattle for milk, meat, and labor. They built proper mud brick homes with dedicated storage. They created the first true homes.
Moving on to Section 3. Farming expansion and adapting to climates. Because once that spark of agricultural innovation hit Mehrgar, it definitely didn't stay isolated. It spread and adapted across the incredibly diverse and honestly brutal climates of the entire Indian subcontinent. Let's see how they pulled it off.
The human ingenuity here is just staggering. Over in the Bolan Valley of modern-day Uttar Pradesh, around 6500 BCE, farmers learned to use the floodplains to cultivate what's recognized as some of the world's oldest rice. But what about the extreme cold? Up in Burzahom, Kashmir, early farmers survived freezing snows by digging these brilliant underground pit houses, totally adapting their farming for the cold. And meanwhile, way down south in places like Huller and Payampally, farmers faced intense heat and brutal droughts. Their fix? Dry farming techniques and growing incredibly tough, resilient millets. Humans were mastering the earth, no matter what environment you threw at them.
Now, let's briefly zoom out here, because we have to remember this was a global phenomenon. Separated by massive oceans and mountain ranges, with absolutely zero way to communicate, humans all across the globe were simultaneously unlocking the secrets of the soil. While India was mastering rice and millets, China was taming the Yangtze River for rice, Mexico was painstakingly breeding wild grass into corn, and way up in the freezing Andes, folks were farming potatoes. It's wild to think about.
Section 4. Storage and trade and building civilization. This global mastery of agriculture brings us to a really fascinating turning point. Let me ask you a crucial question.
Once a society harvests more food than it can actually eat in a single day, what happens next? Well, surplus builds civilization through a rapid chain reaction. It's like a domino effect. Step 1, you've got an excess grain harvest. But grain rots, right? Which demands step 2, the invention of storage tech, leading straight to pottery and granaries. Now, because not everyone has to spend all day farming just to avoid starving, we hit step 3, the division of labor. Some people become potters, some make tools, others become administrators. And finally, step 4, if I have extra grain and you've got extra pottery, we trade. Just like that, the world's very first localized barter networks are born.
And man, this system scaled up dramatically. Simple little grain pits evolved into the massive, meticulously engineered brick granaries of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. They built specialized platforms for one specific reason: to protect their wealth, which was grain, from moisture. This surplus then led to massive warehouses at forts like Lothal, opening the door for maritime shipping. They even established the world's first international trade routes, swapping goods with Mesopotamia, who actually recorded trading with a land they called Maluha, which scholars are pretty sure was the Harappan civilization. Think about that. Agriculture literally built international, trust-based trade.
Which brings us to Section 5, Art and Nature Worship, and how free time brings culture. You see, civilization isn't just about survival and commerce. Having a full stomach and a secure roof over your head finally gave humanity something entirely new: free time. Time to look up at the stars, paint their stories, and really explore their spirituality.
Over 700. That is the staggering number of ancient caves found at Benbetka. Discovered somewhat miraculously back in 1957 by a young archaeologist named V.S. Wakankar, who literally spotted them from the window of a moving train. These rock shelters hold thousands of years of vivid human art. Using natural minerals like red hematite and white limestone, these newly settled humans painted their epic transition from hunting to herding and farming. They basically left us a massive visual diary of their evolving lives.
As they settled down, their whole relationship with the world transformed from pure, desperate survival into deep reverence. Over in places like Chirand in Bihar, archaeologists have unearthed these beautiful terracotta mother goddess figures. The earth was no longer just dirt to walk on, It was viewed as a living, maternal provider. Those terrifying, unpredictable forces of the Ice Age, they were given names and honored: Vayu for the wind, Indra for the rain, Agni for fire, and Surya for the sun. By naming the elements that made their crops grow, these early farmers laid the direct spiritual foundation for the Vedic Age, introducing deities we still recognize in modern culture today.
So, that brings us to our final thought. The next time you sit down for a meal, as you're looking at the wheat or the rice on your plate, I want you to ask yourself, how does the soil beneath your feet still carry the DNA of history's first revolutionary farmers? That meal sitting right in front of you is the direct result of a 12,000-year-old unbroken chain of human survival, observation, and pure genius. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible journey. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.